Hi, I am delighted to be here speaking to you while you're at home for the Winter Conference for AOE 2016. This is amazing. I don't know how many of you are wearing pajamas. I thought about wearing some, but decided to spare you the view. I'm Barney Saltzberg, and I am a children's book author and illustrator. I have been writing and illustrating children's books since 1981. And I have traveled all over the country, all over the world, talking about creativity. I'm thrilled to be speaking to art educators. I think you know a little bit about creativity. My slant is a little different. In my PowerPoint, and I will show you some of that in a bit, I talk about where ideas come from. In the middle of my PowerPoint, I show two images, and I actually have the real deal here. One is a sketchbook, and in this sketchbook I actually spilled a cup of coffee, and once the stain dried I made a monster, and on the back, I forgot, there is a gorilla. That image is in my PowerPoint. I also had done a book called The Flying Garbanzos, and in The Flying Garbanzos, in this very studio that I'm speaking to you from, I had a piece of art on the wall, or actually on my desk, and this piece of art was sitting on the table, and one of our dogs got locked into my studio and tried to climb out of the window. And when she climbed out onto the desk to try to get out the window, she stepped on that art. When I saw the art, I cried. I thought it was ruined. It had paw prints on it. After staring at it for a while, I decided if I took some white paint, I could cover each paw print and make a cloud. Those two images, the cloud drawing and the sketchbook with the monster, were in my PowerPoint, and teachers kept saying, "Can you teach how you fixed your mistakes?" I originally imagined a book that was rather preachy, talking about a child who could fix his mistakes, and it wasn't really working. And one day I was in my studio and I tore a piece of paper part way and realized that it looked like the mouth of an alligator. That gave me the idea for Beautiful Oops. I like the word oops better than mistake. It takes a little sting out of the word. After I came up with the concept for tearing paper and making it into the mouth of an alligator, I started thinking, what other things could I mess up? It became a scavenger hunt. I was spilling, I was tearing, I was smearing, and every time there was what looked like an oops or a mistake, I found a way to turn it into something artistic. The book became a collection of these fixed oopses, and it's been really fun to see what kids and teachers and adults do once they have this in their hands. As a child who grew up in the 60s and was probably someone who would have been diagnosed as an ADD child, as someone with learning disabilities, they really didn't have the capacity to test students the way they do now when I was growing up. I found school a difficult place. There were right and wrong answers for everything we did. Having an opportunity to play was something that didn't exist. Fast forward to where we are now, there still aren't many times during a day as an educator where your students are given freedom. I know you teach art. Don't know how each of you teach, but from a lot of what I've seen, there seems to be a lot of techniques where we are asking our children to either paint like Picasso or Renoir and give them a little example of how to do exactly what they've done. To a child who is having difficulty conforming to what the norm is, this can still be as troubling as having to do a math problem, because there is a right and a wrong way to do it. What I am presenting to you is what I've been presenting all over the world now, is how to use an oops as an opportunity to maybe think a little differently. And what I realized is there aren't very many chances for us to have an opportunity to problem solve. And if you have an oops, you can creative problem solve with the caveat that anything you do is perfect. I can't think of very many times in the classroom where you're told any answer you come up with is perfect. So even something as simple as taking the arm that I don't normally draw with my hand and making a squiggle. This squiggle, I could say, what is it? To a child. A child could say, it's a noodle doing yoga. It is a dancing hare. Any of those answers are perfect. Think of how freeing that is as a teacher to not have to worry about grading something, and as a student to go, I did great. And without the fear of, that's not a good dancing noodle, or go back and work on your dancing noodle, or that is the wrong yoga position. None of those things come into play when you are having oops art. And I can look at this, I have no idea, flip it around. It changes when you start to play with it. And that's something also part of the creative problem solving, empowering part of playing with an oops is I'm going to think about what that is. It develops a different part of your brain. And I'm just going to go zip, zip, zip with this and decide that maybe we have, I thought he was going to be a bird, but now he kind of looks like a bird and a guy. I'm not sure which. I'll give him some glasses. And we have this, a character who didn't exist before we started. Taking that character, you can go beyond just art. If you're doing a writing assignment with a child, who is this guy? Give me some information about him. For a reluctant writer, you've got a character. I can give you some ideas about who he is. Then, as a teacher, to give prompts. Does he have a family? Is he a one-of-a-kind duck guy with glasses? Are there a whole bunch of duck guy glasses? Talk about him. As a student, this is an opportunity and a freedom moment where you can create this world that didn't exist. And there is no sense of, I can make a mistake here. And that moment of recognizing that you can do anything is incredibly empowering. To give you a sense of what Beautiful Oops is all about, I thought we could read the book. Beautiful Oops. Oops. A torn piece of paper is just the beginning. Every spill has lots and lots of possibilities. Bent paper is something to celebrate. A little drip of paint lets your imagination run wild. A scrap of paper can be fun to play with. A smudge and a smear can make magic appear. A stain has potential if you play with the shape. Holes in your paper are worth exploring. When you pull this little guy up and look through the hole, there's a little guy that says, see? Even though it's a little fuzzy. So when you think that you have made a mistake, oops, think of it as an opportunity to make something beautiful. And that is beautiful. Oops. Mistakes are inevitable. We all make them. Again, I'm calling them oops, but you get the idea. How we handle them is crucial beyond just a classroom situation, beyond just art. But having an oops art project allows us to flex a different part of our brain than we normally get to use, and it is teaching us coping skills and how to solve problems. So I have my trash can. I don't have any great trash in here, but I just thought if I take this and take out some stuff, let's just see what's in here. If you give that to a student and say, make something, the reluctant artist, because usually there's one child in the classroom who is the artist, and depending on the age of the children, I find usually by 4th grade, some kids are pretty intimidated and don't really feel comfortable because somebody can draw or make art better. This levels the playing field. You don't have to be a great artist, a great illustrator to take this stuff and do something with it. Just by looking at this stuff, anything I make up, fine. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but if I take this blue old Post-it and I just had some painter's tape, which is falling apart, and stick it down. You can use glue, but just to get this down quickly, here's a little guy. It almost looks like antenna. I can put that on top of that. I can draw a little with this. I could make a body. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold this up. So let me stick this down by putting these antennae here. And I'm going to just wrap the tape all over his face to make it stick because I want to get this across quickly. And we have a character that did not exist a minute ago. I can give him by tearing. This is what I call thinking with hands. If I had to conceptualize this before I started playing, I don't think I could do it. Some learners, like myself, are people who think through their hands or with their hands. By having this in my fingers while I am problem solving, thinking about what I can create, it definitely activates a different part of the brain and gets you to think on your toes. In my case, I'm sitting. So I'm going to draw here and here, and let's just see if this shows up. Can you tell what that is? It's a guy. I have no idea what kind. I think he's got antenna, feelers, he's got wings. He could use some work, but it's a start. I'm not going to spend the entire video making artwork for you, but I wanted to give you a sense of what you can do with virtually nothing. And it is pretty liberating. I did have a teacher tell me that they have an oops box in their classroom. And what they do is anytime a child is making something and it turns out to be not quite what they wanted, and rather than throw it out, they put it in the oops box. Whenever the teacher finds a child has 5 minutes of extra time, they say, go make an oops art project. And they go into that box, rummage through, find the trash that speaks to them, and build some art. That's something I would wholeheartedly encourage all of you to try. It's definitely a way to exercise a different part of your brain and give your students an opportunity to create in a way that is pretty empowering and liberating. I have a short clip that we filmed in the kindergarten. I went with my trash can to introduce making oops art to a group. I'm hoping that you can see as an educator that this would be a great way to get them started, to get their feet wet. So we dumped my trash can and the kids helped art direct. You can do that with your students, and then they can go off and make their own oops art, knowing a little bit about how to go about it. I brought something that's going to surprise you. I work in a studio where I make my books. And I decided that every day I make mistakes. I'm working on a picture and I go, oops, this isn't working. And I'll crumble it up and I'll throw it in my trash can. These are oopses from my house. Let's see what's in here. Ah! Oh, wait, this is lovely. This is an old paintbrush that got stuck to some paper.
No, I want the
You like that?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, it's got a mustache. One of the things that I thought I would do is if I have it up here and I kind of went. How many of you would want a new piece of paper? I can't use this paper. But sometimes you want to, let's go with that thing. I'm going to use that same line and tear it even more so that it's open. Perfect. So let's see what I have. This was tracing paper that I used. What do you think I could do with it?
Come make it a ball.
Can I make a ball?
Make a
How about a nose? No. Eyeball?
No, eyeball.
Cloud?
Yeah, cloud.
Cloud? All right, so let's see.
Cloud.
I'm going to put a piece of tape over it. And we'll do this here. Oh, it's a beautiful cloud.
I like it.
All right, see what else is here? Let's see. This is just a little pink soap that says, here, I'll put it.
A flower.
A flower.
Okay,
So we made a flower out of it. What I would do there, and then I would come down here and go, la la la.
An alligator.
Can you all say hi to the alligator? Okay, so now he's got a beautiful flower and a lovely cloud. What else do we have here? Well, I was painting the sky and I made some boo-boos. So now it kind of reminds me of a horn. What do you think? Can you have a horn?
Yeah.
Now, can I use this? This is clear. What can I do with that?
I do.
What do you think?
A house.
No, for him. A hat?
Hair.
Oh, lovely. He's got hair. Hold on. Oh, that's his hair? Hold on. What else is in here? So, I think I'm going to tear it. Hopefully it'll work. This, I don't know why. Think I was playing with an idea and I stapled it. So, a hair, more hair? So, do you like that for his hair there?
Yeah.
All right, let's try that.
Yeah.
And so he's got some interesting things going on here. Oh, let go. What do you think? More clouds? We make more clouds? All right. Here? Where should I go? Oh, you know what though? Remember I found this guy? Can we use him still?
Oh yeah.
Can we put him up there? Oh, maybe he's painting with him. If you guys had this in your classroom and it stayed on the wall, do you think you could make a story with it?
Yeah.
You know why this even happened? Because I made a book about oopses. And it's called Beautiful Oops. This shows how mistakes like spilling can be made into different things if you play with those shapes. But that is really kind of how this happened, all from oopses. I could make art. So anytime you think you've made a mistake, look at it again. I bet you might get some ideas.
All right.
Anyway, thank you guys so much for letting me do this.
Thank you, Barney.
I'm hoping that by introducing Oops Art to you and your students ultimately, that you will find that you are giving your students an opportunity to develop original thinking, enabling students to experiment, to play. This is something that we don't have a lot of in our classroom or at home, to actually mess around, see what happens. If you as an adult do this with your students and you don't necessarily know the answers to this, that telegraphs something to your students that they don't get very often. Here's an adult going, I don't necessarily know where this is going. The end result isn't something that's predetermined. We're figuring this out on the fly. That develops a different type of thinking, something that we clearly need in this world today, to be able to think on our feet, to problem solve, to not lose it when we do have an oops, to find a way to collect ourselves, think about it, create something that is ultimately beautiful. And I'm hoping that's something you can enjoy teaching to your students. Thanks for listening.